Watch. You're going to witness Charlie Kirk get in an extremely heated debate with a college student who identifies as a Christian about, I don't know how to describe it, but Christianity as it relates to politics, essentially. Folks, it gets intense, and I think you're going to like it. So we're going to get right into it. But first, do me a huge favor and like our video, share it around. That way we can keep bringing you guys this great, hard-hitting content. As always, Patriots, I'm your host, Arian, and this is Resist the Mainstream.
Good. My name is Nick. I'm an aerospace engineering student here. Got a couple questions.
Awesome.
That's all right. So I'm particularly concerned about your brand of Christianity. As a Christian myself, Christian nationalism I do not agree with at all. I think it's antithetical to the values of the early church. And I think, how do you reconcile especially white Christians in this America marrying politics and power with their faith in this country?
Okay.
Well, there's a lot there. I've never described myself as a Christian nationalist. So I'm a Christian and a nationalist, so I've never used those two things.
And then right there, that and nationalist, where in the scriptures does a Christian...
Well, thank you. Jeremiah 29:7, demand the welfare of the nation that you are in because your welfare is tied to your nation's welfare. Let me continue. Daniel fasted and prayed for his nation. Esther and Mordecai cared for their nation. They were counsel to the king.
Right.
Nehemiah, Jeremiah, Joseph, Jacob. I could keep on going. Moses, Aaron. In fact, Moses was so political that he wrote an entire book of the Torah all about how to set up a government. It's the book of Deuteronomy. So, in fact, the Bible is an explicitly political text amongst many other things.
Now, can we interpret those texts in the light of the revelation of Christ? Because you just cited all Old Testament texts, but you have not once cited St. Paul.
Okay, yeah. If you want me to also, by the way, just so we are,
cite St. Paul about the kingdom of heaven and the governance.
Just so we're clear, do you think that the New Testament is greater than the Old Testament?
It is. It is greater because the revelation of Christ dictates how we interpret the Old Testament.
So you think that all of a sudden, like Genesis 1 is not as great just because of the New Testament?
The Old Testament was a type and shadow of the things to come, and now we live in the full revelation of Christ.
Again, that is such a dangerous theological...
That's not true. That's Christological theology.
All Christians should want to bring their way of life into government, politics, society, all of that good stuff. Yeah, after all, if you believe the faith is real and true, you want that kind of moral authority governing society. It only makes sense. I am sick of this nonsense people always spout off about separation of church and state. You can't have any religious influence in the government. Conveniently always directed at Christians and Christianity. Do people even know what that means when they say it? Obviously not. At the end of the day, we are a Christian nation, or at least we were founded as one with those types of values. Yeah, I get it. Some founding fathers were deists and whatever weird stuff. Okay, whatever. At the end of the day, a big part of our emphasis was that God guides our values, and that's indisputable.
Of course I believe in the resurrection, but to all of a sudden say that like in the beginning God created the heavens and the earth is like somehow lesser because of the revelation of the New Testament. Christ even said, I did not come to abolish the law of the prophets, I came to fulfill the law. In fact, he said all the laws of the prophet hang on the two teachings, Leviticus 19 and Deuteronomy 3-5. However, to use a New Testament example, as you asked, says in 1 Timothy, pray for your leaders in authority by name that they might make righteous great decisions. I'm going to continue. Christ our Lord said, on this rock build my what?
Church.
Wrong. Ecclesia. It's not the word church.
Oh, the word English
church,
translations of Common Bible say church, so my bad.
Well, actually, it shouldn't, because the original Greek term says, on this rock build my government structure. Ecclesia was a secular word used in that time, which was all about the advancement of freedom and liberty, which are the two words in Greek, eleutheria, isonomia, which are the two words there. So the point being, Christ called us to be salt and light. We as Christians should change the environment that we come in contact with. That's what salt and light do. So why should we then not care about changing government to be more Christ-like?
Well, you're conflating changing government to be more Christ-like with what I was discussing was nationalistic endeavors, which is the inherent view that our nation is better than other nations.
Well, it is.
Well, God shows no partiality. So
well, no, that's not true. God says in Revelation, I will judge the nations. God says that
nations means ethnicity groups. Well, it doesn't mean borders of countries established.
Not necessarily. Hold on.
It does.
God says the Constitution of Israel will come at the end of the age. Borders is biblical. The entire book of Nehemiah is about building a wall around the nation of Israel. In fact, the idea of borders, the idea of sovereignty is an explicitly biblical idea.
Yes, but Israel is no longer defined by the physical borders. It's actually defined in the spiritual sons and daughters of God who believe in Jesus.
That's a Catholic interpretation.
That's not just Catholic.
Again, it's primarily a Catholic interpretation. I don't share it. I don't want to get into that theological debate.
Okay.
What Charlie's saying is arguably not accurate at all. It's not about that modern nation state, if that's what he's saying. You know, I think that's what he is. It's actually specifically about Jerusalem. And in this case, if you look at the Catholic interpretation, which I believe to be the correct one, it is actually about Yeah, the people of God. In fact, I even pulled up Nehemiah myself just to check. So here's from Nehemiah 2:17. Then I said to them, you see the trouble we are in, how Jerusalem lies in ruins with its gates burned. Come, let us build the wall of Jerusalem so that we may no longer suffer disgrace. And Israel is also mentioned in that same book in different capacities at different times. So just wanted to clarify that.
Because we're going to get nowhere. My mind won't be changed, your mind won't be changed. But around nationalism, why don't you tell me, and I will listen, what a Christian's role in government should or should not be?
Simple, Sermon on the Mount. Operate in that way, and
what does that look like in practice in America in 2025?
Well, in practice, it doesn't look like what has happened in history with Christians who have tried to establish their governance in the lands. For example, American history, slavery. Majority of white Christians supported the institution of slavery. Move on to Jim Crow.
That's actually not true.
No, that is true. That is true.
Time out. 9 out of 13 of the states, by the time of the ratification of the Constitution, were already abolishing slavery. 9 out of 13.
Let's move on to Jim Crow.
Time out. Slavery actually had a minority approval rating by the time of the U.S. founding. We were the second nation ever to abolish slavery because of Christianity. So let me just ask a very moral question. The Christians that got involved in the abolition of slavery, like John Quincy Adams and William Wilberforce, they did it in the name of Christ. Were they wrong?
No, but those were small minority Christians. Majority of the Christians of the time.
Movements.
Let's move on to Jim Crow because majority.
You're moving on
because I didn't finish my statement.
But it was Christianity that abolished slavery.
It was a sect in Christianity that abolished it. It was a remnant of Christians who didn't go with the established order of what Christians believe.
Well, no.
We can go to Jim Crow. Let me finish the statement, please.
Okay.
In Jim Crow, majority of white Christians also supported not abolishing Jim Crow and keeping the institution. They did not support the civil rights movement. This is documented data.
Well, not supporting the Civil Rights Act and supporting Jim Crow are two completely different things.
Those go hand in hand together.
Well, the Civil Rights Act was a disaster. I mean, that was a terrible idea. But, I mean, that's a whole separate issue. But just so we are clear, because the Civil Rights Act hyper-racialized America. We actually talk about race more after the Civil Rights Act than before. We were promised a color-blind society. We got a race-obsessed society.
The Civil Rights Act is frequently abused, and it's not just in regards to race, too. It's actually been weaponized against Christians on countless occasions. I'm sure you all are familiar with the case of Masterpiece Cape Shop versus the Colorado Civil Rights Commission, when a Christian baker was absolutely attacked because he simply didn't want to design a wedding cake for a same-sex, gay, homosexual wedding, in quotes. I put that in quotes for a reason. He got attacked so badly, lost so much money, it ruined his business. I believe he even had to let go of employees because he couldn't pay them anymore because of all the legal fees. Truly disgusting stuff. He had a similar case in New Mexico in 2013 where a Christian photographer was similarly attacked because the court said, oh, you're discriminating by not going and taking pictures for, you guessed it, a same-sex wedding. That's absolutely evil, all right? It's disgusting. And justifications about anti-discrimination were made in large part because of the Civil Rights Act. It's very problematic.
But just to be clear, today in America, what does a Christian properly involved in government look like?
I'm just going to say the same thing I said, the Sermon on the Mount.
Okay,
love your neighbor as yourself. Take others before your own needs. Feed the poor, clothe the sick, care for the widow, advocate for these values.
I agree with all that. And so, for example, to care for the poor and care for the vulnerable, abolish abortion. Right?
So abortion is another issue, but what about the living right now? Because
Yes.
you don't seem to be for raising taxes on billionaires.
Of course not. Why would I?
So if you want to legislate morality, abortion, I want to curb the sin of greed.
But so you want to curb the sin of greed
So
by taking other people's stuff? That's pretty greedy of you.
No, it is not. It is not.
Just to be clear,
the data shows is that
raising
the
taxes,
past 40 years, the wealth in this country, the wealth inequality
Yes.
has increased, which is the top 1% has
Yes.
grabbed the wealth of the majority bottom.
There are reasons why that's happened, but just
Why
so
is
we
that
are
happening?
clear,
Why is that happening?
I'm happy to explain that. Just so we are clear, saying we're going to just raise tax on the billionaires, that statement, you just violated 2 out of the 10 commandments.
That's not true.
Thou shalt not steal and thou shalt not covet.
How
We're going
is
to go
that
take other
stealing?
people's money.
How is that stealing?
Because it's their money.
We live in a society that is run by taxes. How is that stealing?
Well, taxations are a form of theft, definitionally, because it's not the government's money. It is private property that you earn when the government extracts it
someone
by
breaks
force.
into your house, you call the police. When you have a fire, you call the fireman. When you want to drive, you drive on roads. When you want to mail, you use the U.S. Post Office. These are all taxes.
Yeah,
we all contribute as a society.
Of course.
This is elementary stuff. It's not theft. How do you run a society
Well, hold
without
on.
taxes?
What happens if you don't pay your taxes?
I mean, you get the law handed to you, but
Oh, okay. So therefore, so you pay taxes at gunpoint.
If you break the law, you should pay the fine.
No, exactly. That's the point, is that taxes are not voluntary. Nor do I think they should be voluntary. You just have to be honest and say, yes, at some form, the government has to forcibly take some of your money away. I agree with that.
I think a bit of nuance is in order here. When Charlie says we shouldn't be taxing billionaires, well, which billionaires? If we're talking about Jeff Bezos, I say tax him way more than he already is getting taxed. After all, Amazon pays $0 in federal taxes. Sorry, but what the hell is up with that? Excuse my French. I find that ridiculous. This is a company that has better logistics than the United States government. All right, Jeff Bezos owns the Washington Post. These types of media outlets lobbied for these extremely, in my opinion, tyrannical reactions to the COVID-19 crisis that ultimately ended up stuffing the pockets of Amazon and giving them so much profit through what I view as a totally anti-constitutional strategy. Tax them? Hell yeah, we don't tax them enough.
But just, we're going in so many different rabbit trails. Let me ask you just like a fundamental, simple question. Is that, do you want to see a government that fights for Christian principles or not?
That excludes the rest of the population? If we're not living in a theocracy, no, I want equal representation. And the church doesn't need to have government in order to thrive. In fact, in suffering and humility, the church thrives.
Yeah, I mean, again, that's like totally insane, but that's fine.
How is that insane? Go look at the early church.
You want to invite persecution is what you're saying.
I'm not inviting it, but yes, Christians ought to welcome it and embrace it and go through it.
Okay, but sometimes persecution results in the unjust suffering of millions of people unnecessarily. And so you should never invite evil into this world.
Did Jesus not promise that to us?
Well, did Jesus promise trials in difficult times?
Yes.
Yes, of course, but we should not invite it voluntarily. You know what that's like saying? Let's just, have no military, everyone can invite us because persecution will make us stronger. It's such a ridiculous, like, abstract argument.
I mean, I don't see any scripture supporting a military for Christians.
You don't think we should have a military?
A government can have a military, but Christians...
What? Yeah, I mean, look, man, you got to go a lot deeper into the scriptures. You have a dangerously surface level.
You should read early church fathers on how they view violence and
actually,
the military.
So you want to talk about early church fathers? Tell me about St. Augustine's just war theory.
You tell me about it.
Tell me, you just brought up early church fathers.
No, you tell me about
about St. Augustine in the City of God, 3rd chapter, just war theory.
Well, I don't really agree with a lot of St. Augustine because
he's the most popular early church father.
In the West.
St. Augustine in his just war theory clearly laid out, I mean, there's a lot of stuff there, but basically a big premise of it was that you can't really justifiably go to war unless the ultimate goal is bringing peace. And it makes sense because at the end of the day, the world isn't perfect. There's a lot of evil in the world, and sometimes you have to put a stop to it. It's a sad reality, but it is nonetheless reality. So many Christians have this kind of ridiculous fantasy idea of, oh no, man, Jesus was a hippie, bro. He, burned green and loved peace and stuff, man. It's like, dude, no, okay? Jesus would actually get really pissed off and angry sometimes, and he would take action. And that's something that people just conveniently either forget or just don't know.
But there's the East, St. Athanasius, St. Gregory of Nyssa, Origen, all these different names that you probably are not familiar because it's in the East. But most early church fathers condemned violence for, if you're in the church, you must leave the military, quit service because you now belong to the kingdom of God, which is operates on a different
Do you agree with that?
I agree that if you're a Christian, you have no reason to commit violence for any reason at all.
I think that's insane. Honestly.
Just look at the example of Jesus. Was he put on a throne or did he embrace the cross?
It says at the end of age, Jesus will come with a sword to judge.
Are you reading Revelation literally?
Yes, of course I am.
So he has an actual sword out of his mouth.
Yeah, I mean, like, what's your contention?
The interpretation that's common is Revelation, when he has a sword, that's the word, dividing your soul and spirit, piercing the hearts. He's not waging war on people and killing millions of people.
That Christians should not serve in the military is your contention?
That's my belief. You don't have to believe that.
Yeah. We're going to have to get to the next question.
All right.
That's a new one. I got to be honest. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well, folks, that wraps it up for today. I hope you enjoyed the interaction. What do you think? I found it quite interesting. I think Charlie held his own pretty well, but there are a couple things I didn't quite agree with. What do you think? I want to hear your thoughts. What do you guys think? Was Charlie 100% on point? Was he only 90, 80? I don't know. Let us know in the comments. And if you have not already, make sure you subscribe below. And that way we'll make sure that we see you again soon. God bless.